Since Gears of War Eday was announced, I've covered a lot of news and discussion videos regarding characters returning, new enemies, weapons and so on, but we've not deeply discussed the story and lore and where the campaign narrative could possibly go. So all that changes today. As always, I'm your host Abz, and here is my Gears of War Eday story predictions and ideas. The setting. Firstly, I'm going to talk setting and basically look at the timeline and themes of the campaign. Obviously, it's Eday, so it will undoubtedly be focused on this day, the day in which the universe is focused around. There's so much story and lore to tell on the event that started it all. A catastrophic, global event which has hundreds of stories and micro stories within it to explore. I believe that the game needs to mainly focus on Emergence Day itself, the aftermath, as well as the events that came before it. A Pendulum Wars prologue featuring Carlos Santiago is a must, especially to set the backstory and context for Marcus and Dom, our beloved protagonists, with heavy focus on the Battle of Asphalt Fields. We need backstory to the world of Sarah during this time, so focus on the Coalition of Ordered Governments, the Union of Independent Republics, the Pendulum Wars aftermath, and how Sarah was slowly rebuilding itself before Emergence Day happened, literally out of nowhere. Context is key. The game can't just start off with Emergence Day. They need to describe this whole world and setting within the timeline itself. Many people have speculated, and I've seen some of your comments wondering if Eday should end with Marcus being sent to prison, or if it should be a trilogy ending with that. Although it's a very cool thought, I would disagree, since Marcus was sent to the Slab prison 10 whole years after Eday, so I don't think it's a good idea to do a huge time skip in Gears Eday, or within a trilogy. You can't just throw away 10 years worth of story and content and box yourself into a corner narratively, because once Marcus is in prison then that's it. You can't do anything with Marcus, because the next time he is seen is at the start of Gears 1. Gears Eday should be a standalone game, because Emergence Day needs to be fully fleshed out from every angle possible. There needs to be the mainline game, a prologue, and multiple campaign DLCs of Emergence Day itself. We need it from the Locust Horde's perspective. We need it from the UIR's perspective, and how General Khan destroyed Goraznia. We need it from perhaps other characters' perspectives like Baird and Cole, and the perspective from different branches of the COG, like the Onyx Guard or the COG Navy, which would be freaking awesome. There's just so much content to work with. And then hopefully, if done right, Eday will be a huge success, and then the mainline game can be 6 months later in the timeline, or a year later where another huge battle takes place, and just take it step by step. I don't think huge time skips is a good idea when there's just so much to explore. The story. From what we know, the story has a focus on Marcus and Dom, and here they're not the war-forged, battle-hardened super gears that we know from the trilogy. They're young veterans of the Pendulum Wars against human opposition, but they now find themselves taking on a monstrous force never encountered before. They're gonna have to work out how to deal with these foes, seeing which tactics work, and at times improvising, grabbing any weaponry available, and it just being messy and utter chaos in battle. It's not gonna be easy. In the trilogy, they dispatch locust drones like they're nothing, and so in the trilogy, enemies like the drones and grenadiers are just like cannon fodder, when in reality this is not the case. They're monstrous, superhuman-like foes who can rip you to shreds in a moment. So we're gonna see Marcus and Dom struggle and slowly find their way. In the story, we're gonna need to see how Carlos's death affected Marcus and Dom, and how they now cope with it through each other after their brother died. So we're gonna need to see some 5-star amazing character development. We need a look into Marcus and his father Adam Phoenix's dynamic during this time. Adam needs to play a big role for the COG in Eday, and looking into the crazy thoughts going on in his mind, since he, Adam, was the one that knew Emergence Day was coming all along, and seeing his interactions with Marcus, but especially the COG High Command. So with the chairman at the time, Chairman Daliel, and with the General Bardry Salomon, and seeing if there were any interactions with the UIR's leadership during this time. The COG's leadership will be focused on a counter-attack, but of course the gears are unprepared for Emergence Day, so once the COG's counter-offensive is defeated, then it's going to be interesting seeing the COG High Command in despair, and perhaps always turning to Adam Phoenix for potential ideas and solutions. A big focus for Dom in the trilogy was his family, most notably his wife Maria, and therefore we need to rewind and fill those details in, right? So if you remember in Gears 2, when the Riftworm swallowed Delta Squad, Dom had a dream of Maria waking him up, and that indeed was on Emergence Day itself. So you can literally start the mainline game with that, once the backstory has been given through the prologue. Dom wakes up only to find out what's happening on the TV or radio, and hearing nothing from Maria's parents and their children, with Dom then meeting with Marcus and reporting for duty together shortly after. Tell the story, or even show what happened to Dom's children on Emergence Day, and how it affected Dom and especially Maria during that time. It's basically working backwards from the trilogy and filling in those gaps to show us how we got here in the first place, and then it'll make Maria's death in Gears 2 feel even more depressing. Then of course Marcus and Dom will be in Kelowna with the rest of their squad. Whether that squad also consists of Ty Kaliso, Had Sultan and others remains to be seen, but during this time the COG is still a huge superpower, as opposed to seeing how the COG was functioning 14 years later in the trilogy. So we need to see the COG's full capability on Eday, although the Locust will be just too powerful for them. The COG aren't a nation power, they're a global superpower, so we need to see the COG's swift response, their elite teams, their weaponry, vehicles, commandos, COG Navy, Engineering Corps being dispatched, the COG Air Corps deploying in full capability, but even the emergency services, seeing COG ambulances and paramedics helping the injured, as well as seeing the COG police directing civilians to safety and so on. Also, there's the Lancer Chainsaw origins, which will be explained in the game as confirmed by the Coalition, so there will need to be a cutscene of Ty picking up a power saw and slicing up Locust drones, only for Marcus to go talk to his father about it shortly after. Gameplay and set pieces. Now the plot is based around Kelowna and Marcus and Dom, but what actually happens within Kelowna itself? Only time will tell, but we can give some ideas and speculation. Does a Locust high-ranking officer or captain show up in Kelowna? Or are we just keeping it simple with emergence holes, ambushes of Locust drones and grenadiers, wretches, ragers and so on? The world of Sarah in Emergence Day isn't really the destroyed beauty that we know from the trilogy. There are skyscrapers that we see in the trailer, urban buildings, a huge bridge and so on. So guys, what do you think? Is that foreshadowing some of the battles that will take place? I reckon so. I think we will be fortifying and fighting within urban buildings, so close quarters, in your face combat, with Locust drones, Locust ragers, wretches, you name it, going at it with Marcus, Dom and others. There could be battles in dark alleyways. You'd be seeing cars and infrastructure being destroyed in front of your very eyes. Just the world disintegrating and falling into the ground right in front of you. The beautiful world of Sarah that the characters know sinks into holes while the Locusts emerge from below, with corpses, Brumacs and more taking down heavy COG vehicles, and the COG's air support quickly being dispatched of by the Cedars, Nemesis and Reavers. Set pieces are going to be a huge thing for Gears Eday, so it can't just be cover, shoot, like how Gears 1 mainly was, just taking cover, throwing a frag grenade into an emergence hole, shoot, cover, no. So like I said, we need some set pieces within urban buildings, in close quarters, with a lot of melee interactions, some set pieces in alleyways, with a lot of darkness, where you have little supplies and ammunition. There's a massive bridge in Kelowna, so I want to see a big fight taking place there, and there should be water below it of course, so I want to see us get involved there somehow, maybe jumping on a Marlin attack boat and taking on some Locust with the COG Navy's assistance. I want to see Marcus and Dom involved with the civilians too, so maybe defending a school at some point, and also having limited time missions, because they will need to act and evacuate quickly before Locust reinforcements arrive. It would be a lot more defensive as opposed to being more aggressive like in Gears 2 for instance, where you're exploring and advancing in the hollow. It's going to be about keeping civilian deaths as low as possible really, and just survival of the fittest. I really want to see a set piece of Marcus and Dom on a rat bike as they ride towards the huge bridge where the battle takes place for instance, and taking on Locust on the way. That would be insane. Or also using a UIR ASP to take down Locust Reavers or a Brumac, which was a UIR anti-air tank, and the COG could have had some that they captured from the Pendulum Wars. Also, of course, using some weapons I mentioned in my Eday weapons video, due to the timeline we're working with here. like the rocket launcher to take out Brumacs or Reavers, using Molotov cocktails to flush out enemies, using a sawed-off shotgun in close quarters to wipe out 2 to 3 drones that are in your face, using the UIR's Markser, and so on. At the start of the game we're going to be using the Retro Lancer, so we may struggle with it, which actually ties into the lore anyway since the Gears struggled with the Retro Lancer when the Locusts were up in our face, and it'll make it very difficult. But once the Mark II Lancer chainsaw is explained through Ty, then we can start using that, and then we can begin our journey of chainsawing Locust drones into nothing but bits, with the game showing the significance of how one weapon was able to allow the Gears to compete on the front lines, because without it they would have been absolutely screwed. So that's my Gears of War Eday story predictions, ideas and thoughts as of now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more similar content like this, and a big special thank you to those who helped support the channel further. I really appreciate you. I'm your host Abz, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.